serve the death knell for Scotland's hydrocarbon production in advance of the transition. Crucially, Madam Chair, in advance of the transition, economically illiterate, fiscally incompetent and with industrial suicide as the result. A windfall tax is supposed to be a tax on extraordinary profits, yet the extraordinarily high global oil and gas prices which preceded the introduction of the tax have long since abated. Through these changes, the Labour Party jeopardises investment in Scotland's offshore energies and in so doing risks the future of our skilled workforce and our ability to hit net zero employing those workers. Analysis from OE UK shows that the increase and extension of the EPL will risk costing the economy £13 billion and putting 35,000 jobs at risk as a result of these provisions. The analysis also shows a collapse in viable capital investment offshore from £14.1 billion to £2.3 billion in the period 25 to 29 under these changes. And it's increasingly apparent the government doesn't really understand how investment horizons work offshore. They're not on a month-to-month basis. They take years to work up. This loss of economic value not only impacts the core sector itself, but domestic supply chains companies, many of whom exist in my Angus and Perthshire Glens constituency, and they have an essential role to play in the just transition. The Labour Party promised there would be no cliff, yet they have concocted one for 35,000 workers.
Usually when I do live streams, it's a case I'm having to move about from
the Labour Party had claimed these changes would keep the UK in line with Norway. The regime after Labour's changes cannot be compared to that of Norway's, which allows companies a maximum £78 of relief per £100 expenditure in the UK.
But anyway, I hope you will, my friend.
£6.25. After this last couple of weeks, Madam Chair, I'm giving to wondering if the Treasury front bench can actually count.
Hello, Evelyn.
Changes to the EPL will hinder in the just transition. The government argues that the reduction in the rate of the decarbonisation
I know my wife should be coming home soon, so
will maintain the overall cumulative value of relief for investment expenditure following the rate increase, reflecting that this relief will increase in value against a higher levy rate. However, this still reflects a political choice to deprioritise investment in decarbonisation rather than allowing more valuable decarbonisation relief
it's just a
as
little
a solitary positive byproduct.
Little try on something. I'm just trying
Labour
to work
has striven
something
to
out.
ensure that there is absolutely no silver lining to this fiscal attack cloud on Scotland's energy industry.
But anyway, Evelyn.
Do you agree with me that what
this is something to do with
the fact that when the comparisons to Norway, whether it be about the sheer focus on trying to squeeze as much taxation out of the industry as possible, without a focus on how we become more competitive.
I just thought I'd pop this in your something to watch while I'm just messing about.
To be comparing ourselves to the most competitive economies on oil and gas in the world, not those that squeeze and tax the most out of the industry and kill jobs.
Well, exactly. The honourable gentleman raises the question of jobs, and the government are playing fast and loose. Russian roulette are playing with the jobs in the oil and gas sector. And what they don't seem to understand is that when what they've got wrong here comes home to roost, they can't just go, oh, well, sorry, we got that wrong. When it's gone, it's gone. You're not bringing it back. This is not 1972, it's 2024. This is not coming back. We're already in the closing chapter of the sector, and this government seems to completely misunderstand that. And the simple truth is that the UK state cannot meet net zero,
like on the side of OBS, it says YouTube live control panel, and I'm just wondering whether I can get my chat to go in there, and it would just, because if I'm honest, it would just
existing energy sector and putting at risk
if I can get my
transition into the bargain.
Live stream chat there,
and it takes
one
the worst of all world scenario,
pain of an ass of a job
industry of investment,
of my hands,
sacrifice the jobs of those who can
instead
deliver
of
net zero,
trying
energy security,
balance about 3 or 4 things at once.
Harm the economy of Scotland, whilst at the very same time failing to invest the money required to truly deliver against the green transition.
Take you up on that.
Analysis from OEUK
I'm having to pop out my chat, and then I'm just having to
tax yield will peak in 2026 under
some sort of
Labour's increase to the EPL before declining
then I'm
compared
moving between
to the previous
doing
scenario,
whatever I'm doing with Twitter, and then
Treasury receipts over the period.
Then move on
the
to
analysis shows that while the expected tax take from Scotland's oil and gas producers would increase in the very short term. Ultimately, over the course of the
remainder of the sector, balancing 3 or 4 things at once, and it does my box.
£12 billion loss in receipts to the Treasury compared to the current regime. It's
I can't be just like Livestream, you know, like
the government loses. If the Labour Party does not care about the jobs in this policy, the jobs that will be caused by this policy, the harm that it does to our prospects for a just transition, nor the damage to the economy of Scotland, surely they can see that a tax increase which reeks of incoherent desperation that reduces tax receipts to the tune of £12 billion is at the very least suboptimal. But I don't expect the government, Madam Chair, to take it from me. But they might want to pay attention to the first one heading for the door.
Yeah, I'm using one screen.
Who said the
I'm only using one screen. Is that the problem?
Compared with the substantial
I'll be free after 5 p.m. Right, yeah, I might just take you up on that offer.
Of hydrocarbons but beyond 2029. Uneconomic. OEUK said this policy will undermine the UK's offshore energy sector and their ability to support the government's overarching goal of driving growth. This policy will trigger an accelerated decline of domestic production and corresponding reduction in taxes and jobs supported under
YouTube live control panel. Why can't you just put your chat in there?
The chief economist at the Institute of Directors said autumn tax rises have dented confidence in the environment for business in the UK. I don't expect the government to listen to me, Madam Deputy Speaker, but they really should listen to those at the forefront of the invaluable energy sector. So, in closing, I do ask the Minister to address the point directly that what impact assessment have they made of the investment horizon for oil and gas in the North Sea? Thank you.
Where House.
Madam Chair, I rise to briefly speak in support of New Clause 2. I welcome the government finally scrapping the unfair investment allowance loophole for the oil and gas giant. Something we Liberal Democrats have been advocating for and called for since the last government introduced
hello, Dream Dancer, hope you well.
Half-heartedly
this is just an off chance of a live stream because I'm just trying to work something out with my
Russia's invasion of Ukraine and global
I'll do that. Yeah, no worries, like cheers for that.
To soar.
And while the oil and gas giants saw record profits, if I can get that sorted out, it could just really, you know,
cost of living prices. The previous government
save me so much hassle,
a lot to answer for. They sat and watched
it's like
as the oil and gas giant lined
juggle
their
with
pockets
10
off the
balls.
back of people struggling with their bills. It did not have to be that way. I guess they do not want to hear it. It did not have to be that way. Those are the political choices the previous government
made. I don't think it's worked.
The measures announced by the government in this bill are welcome, especially as they remove the 29% investment allowance except for investments on decarbonisation.
Hello, Jeannie, but I
our
hope
Liberal
well.
Democrat policy, and I'm pleased the government has picked up on it, and it's now going to become reality. We Liberal Democrats were the first to call for a tax on oil and gas windfall profits back in October 2021. And while the previous government did eventually introduce the energy profits levy, that did so very half-heartedly and woefully late in late 2022. It matters that we repeat this again and again. It is something that was failed to be done by the previous government. The oil and gas giants were let off the hook by putting in place a massive loophole in the form of the investment allowance. And thanks to this investment allowance, in 2022, Shell admitted that it had paid zero windfall tax despite making the largest global profits in its 150-year history, £31 billion. This cannot be right, Madam Chair, while our constituents have been struggling with paying their bills. My honourable friend, the member for St Albans, has tabled New Clause 2. This amendment would require the government to produce a report, as we have already heard, about the fiscal impact of the bill's changes to the energy profits levy investment expenditure relief. We cannot lose sight of the bigger picture. To avoid a repeat of the energy crisis, we must end our reliance on oil and gas.
Right.
Investing in renewables would mean cheaper energy across the country. We would no longer be reliant on dictators such as Vladimir Putin, who use natural gas as a weapon. As well as being more affordable, renewables are the best route to energy security. And it is very disappointing, Madam Chair, to hear that again and again the opposition benches are just advocating for business as usual. We need to transition away from the oil and gas. I'm happy to give away yet again.
Thank the Honourable for giving way.
Hello, Madam Monk, hope you well. It's just a little bit of
we will be fully
preempted
able just
live
to be
stream. I'm just trying to work out how I can.
For her intervention, it is absolutely by putting in place the measures for transition that we will actually reach net zero. But
when I do my live streams, I pop it.
We just do business as usual. We continue to listen to the people who are ultimately not understanding that unless we get to net zero, our whole economy is going to suffer.
Improve my live stream chat where I can just put it into a certain place where I'm not having to juggle
by the issues that we're having through big problems when climate change can rule
whenever you press
unchallenged.
onto your live stream chat, it's a case of
and so do my
all
Liberal
your other things that you've got
colleagues believe
that
the transition to net zero is important, and we need to put measures in place to make that happen. It is disappointing that the previous government
and then I'm having to use my mouse to
opposition
find it
still
on
not understand how urgently
it's a nightmare.
we require
if I can
climate
sort of
action.
get me chat where it's permanently on the screen. I will have a little look and see if I can sort out.
What is her understanding of what will happen to domestic consumption of oil and gas products and oil and gas products in the United Kingdom
so
if the industry domestically
maybe something
atrophies and the demand domestically still exists? What will happen in that scenario?
I noticed it did it a couple of times on Friday.
Just give it up overnight?
So maybe that's something I need to have a little look at and see if I can improve on.
The whole argument is that yes, of course, we will continue to rely on oil and gas for the time being, but unless we are starting to change something in the current projection, we will not get to net zero as urgently as we need to. And progress has been, Madam Chair, too slow. So the longer we hesitate, the more difficult it will become to get to net zero. So the urgency in which this new government, the urgency that this new government has understood, we are supporting as Liberal Democrats the government on putting more urgency than we have currently have previously seen from the previous government. And therefore, again, I repeat, Madam Chair, that we are supporting the measures, but we would like the government to support our Liberal Democrat amendment. As we have said, it will actually show what
I wonder if it's something to do with video bit rate. I wonder if that's what it is.
Closing the loophole, and it would by extension, as has been clarified by my honourable friend already, it would by extension show what has actually been squandered by the previous government. Money that could have been invested into happy to give way.
According to the New Economics Foundation, the levy introduced by the opposition raised the investment raised not £10.6 billion that was given to the oil and gas industry. They only invested £3.6 billion of that into new capital projects, taking the remainder as sheer profits. Does she agree with me that that is exactly the reason why that was a foolhardy proposal by the opposition at the time? Because actually the profits made didn't go into investing into new capital assets, but actually largely went into shareholders' pockets.
Yesterday, tomorrow, I hope.
Indeed, and I couldn't agree more, and I thank you for clarifying exactly the figures here. This is exactly why something needed to change and something needed to give.
Totally understand
I
what you
repeat,
mean,
Madam Chair,
that
I hope that the government benches can support our amendment, because it will actually, and it matters, it will lay open what has been squandered and what difference it would make if we are closing that loophole. Thank you.
Ewan Yang. Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologise for my inconsistent mobbing. I'm still learning when to stand
the video bit rate.
But what has gone up and what has kept up consistently are the record profits of the oil and gas majors.
Does it run a bit smoother now?
My speech on. I will then go on to speak about where these profits have come from, and finally where the proceeds of our energy profits levy will go to fund. So firstly, on these record profits, And yes, as I think all members of this committee agree, the record profits in 2022 in the oil and gas industry were excessive. However, in 2023, let's take Shell, for example, the largest oil and gas major in Europe, its profits barely did decrease from the previous year. And in fact, this year's profits, if we take the half-year profits of Shell, look likely to eclipse even that of last year.
Yeah. I need to remind myself, what were they actually
in profits for Shell alone in the first half of this year, half of which went to share buybacks, and those share buybacks do nothing to fund the decarbonisation that is so necessary for securing the future of energy production here in the UK and around the world. So these record profits, much of which have been handed back to shareholders, are going in the opposite direction of what ordinary families, working people need. And rather than reinvest in the transitions of the future, I would argue that the party opposite are looking at the industries of the past and clinging on to a past that is quickly fading from reality. Secondly, let's look at where those profits have come from. And I quote from the House of Commons library here when they state that generally lower wholesale prices last year.
It was a finance bill committee, new clause 5. That's what they're
However, they have been
about.
far more cautious in pricing these tariffs, with prices set close to the levels of the energy cap. Any return of competition to the market
is it smooth now? Cheers for that. Because I noticed it, we're doing it a lot.
Reflects the state of affairs that we face today, where the wholesale prices of oil and gas, for example, if you look at the spot price for Brent crude in the market today, are back below the levels they were pre the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Might be when you're moving to different Windows apps.
Ordinary working families in the UK, Madam Chair, are still far above those levels. And what happens in the middle? The middle are the profits that are being taken by oil and gas companies and that are not largely being reinvested in the productive sectors of the future, but being paid back to shareholders.
Given to the Tories.
And in any market, Madam Chair, I'd argue where return of
might
competition
be just a case of I might just have
there is a role for the government in regulating the fair share of proceeds of who gets the surplus from that market. And here I would pause and say, when we look,
it's like when I've got my chats popped out and I've got whatever I've got on my
for the interests of working people,
my live stream,
and when you look at who's arguing for the interests of the oil and gas
videos that I'm using,
I think it's very clear to see the political divisions
and I'll have
in this house.
Little part where I've got some notes
when there are schools
and little bullet
points.
In
my constituency of Early and Woodley,
I've got a little bit all over the place. That's the problem.
When the school where I live in Maiden
I'm trying to
is asking its parents' association to help provide better wooden frames for their windows because they are leaking in the winter. That is a public estate that our government has been elected to fix and to repair, and that we will set about doing so with the profits and the levies that we discuss in the bill today, and I will take that intervention.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. When she says that it's clear who's on the side of working people versus the companies, my constituents are the people working in the oil and gas sector. They're the ones most at risk of losing their jobs if the changes brought in through the EPL go wrong. I'm on the side of working people. I'm on the side of my constituents, Gordon and Buchan. No matter what MPs from across this House say, I will always fight for my working people in Gordon and Buchan who just happen to be working people in the oil and gas sector.
I thank the lady for her intervention. I also refer to my register of interests in my support from the unionised voices of those members working in the sectors that the lady refers to. And that is also why I commend the government's Green Prosperity Plan to set about a skills transition and funding for skills transition for those workers so that they can also profit from the industries of the future rather than the industries of the present and the past. Now, finally, I want to mention what the Energy Profits Levy, which raises £2.3 billion, as the Minister set out over the course of this Parliament, will go towards funding. And that's partly towards the funding of Great British Energy, headquartered in Aberdeen, which will bring innovation in green technologies not only to Scotland, but to the whole of the UK.
So in a funny way, it won't quite, this live stream's not being as good productivity wise, but in a way, funny way, as it's actually helped me to learn a little bit more on things. So yeah, it's probably cheers for that, lads.
Now, I will forgive for a moment the member for Angus and Partister-Glen and not recognising perhaps my friends, the member for Hamilton and Clyde Valley. I know that there have been an awful lot of new Scottish Labour MPs elected at the last election. It must be difficult to learn all of their faces. And I would ask that member perhaps reflect on the reasons for the election of such a record number of Scottish Labour MPs while he sets about learning
reflect on it.
While he sets about learning their names and faces. But the government auction of 130 wind, solar and tidal projects in its last Contracts for Difference points the way to the future, Madam Chair. It points the way to generating 95% of our energy in the UK through green energy and decarbonised energy by 2030. It points the way to the transition that all of us, I hope, in this committee and certainly on the government benches, are looking forward to in the next 10 years. Yeah. And also the delivery of the local power plan, which will support the local energy projects in communities like mine. The funding of local projects like Reading Hydro, which takes hydroelectric energy from the Thames, like Reading Community Energy Society, which generates solar energy on the rooftops of the University of Reading and rooftops across my constituency of Earley and Woodley. It's all these projects into the future that I look forward to, and that's why I commend these measures today.
Yeah. Sammy Wilson.
Oh, this should be fun.
Madam Chairman. The government has set a number of objectives which is to achieve over the next 5 years. Central to that is growth.
Wouldn't it be hilariously funny if, you know, that our rather inebriated Sammy Wilson just fell over the front part of the balcony and just drunken haze?
High-paid jobs, energy security, increased investment. And I've got to say, when I look at clauses 15 to 17 of the Finance Bill, I ask myself, has the government gone mad? Because the very objectives which it is seeking to achieve, it is undermining by its policy of taxation. A policy which I believe is driven more by the green ideology and by prejudice against some high-earning companies rather than by any economic logic. Because the economic logic of these proposals, and indeed the predictions which have been made by those who have fed in the data and the information about these proposals, indicates that at least in our major oil and energy industry, investment is going to go down, production is going to go down, and jobs are going to go down. High-paid jobs. And I know that the Honourable Lady for Earley and Woodley talked about her party being a party which is interested in ordinary workers. It's been pointed out already that there are no Scottish Labour MPs taking part in this debate. Shame. I suspect that the 100,000 workers in Scotland who depend upon the oil and gas industry feel abandoned today, because there is no one here defending them. Though I've got to say, if I were an MP from Scotland, I might not want to be sticking my head over the parapet in defending these kind of measures and then having to go back to my constituents to explain them. And I suspect that they'll go through the lobbies and vote for it, but they'll not have to. Well, and the Honourable Lady is opening her arms and saying she's from Scotland. We'll look forward to hearing her contribution later on in the debate in defence of these measures, which are going to cost jobs. And not only going to cost jobs, and of course we have heard it all, but these jobs will be replaced by high-paid, skilled jobs in the renewable industry. There is little evidence of that so far. And indeed, if we look at the sources of the materials and the providers of the renewable turbines, etc., the skilled jobs are not in Britain. Low skilled jobs are elsewhere. And we're making ourselves dependent upon places like China, who have got control of the earth metals and the valuable metals which are required to provide the necessary equipment for
so's my lovely wife.
For the renewable industry.
It won't be too long before I'll be
Thank you very much for giving way. And I think you've touched on a really, really important point, which is to get... the Honourable Member has touched on an important point. To get to the 2030 targets the government has set out, to be able to create those green jobs the honourable member has referred to requires on two technologies that have not been tried and tested at scale, carbon capture and battery storage. So why would we gamble such an important 100,000 job industry in favour of technologies that haven't even been tried and tested at scale yet?
Well, and of course, it's not only a case that they haven't been tried and tested. There's also an acceptance. Indeed, the government's own stated position is that even with those technologies, we're going to be reliant and going to need oil and gas not to 2030, not even to 2040, but beyond 2050. Now, if that oil and gas is not generated and we don't extract as much of it from our own resources here in the United Kingdom, where do we get it from? We get it from abroad. And so we come to this whole issue of energy security. The nations abroad and the places where this is likely to be produced are not going to be in countries which are stable or countries which will always be favourable towards it. I'll give away when I made the point. Or countries which are going to be favourable to us, or countries which are ruled by rational rulers. It'll be coming from countries where rulers are irrational, where they take decisions and political decisions about who they trade with and who they don't trade with on a whim. And so this idea that we're going to rely on these kinds of fossil fuels until well beyond 2050, and we're not going to produce them ourselves. In fact, we're going to discourage companies from producing them in the United Kingdom, even though we know we have the resources. And somehow or other, we're going to guarantee security of supply and security of energy for our constituents. It's just madness. And I'll give way.
It was just an impromptu live stream.
To ask him,
really.
Madam Chair. Does he believe that climate change is happening and that we need to get to net zero by 2050, or does he believe it's all a hoax?
Well, only a fool would say that climate change is not happening. Climate change has occurred for all the time that this earth has been in existence. Of course it happens. And of course it is happening. And so the Honourable Lady is asking me a question which I think anybody could give an easy answer to. And yes, it's happening. But does that mean that, first of all, we have identified all of the sources of the change in our climate? And does it also mean that we should distort our economy in a way which she would suggest to try and make changes to the world's climate, especially when other people are not making any changes to their economy, indeed are not following our lead. They're simply ignoring us and doing what is best, what they believe is best for their own economy. The second point I want to make on this is, so first of all, we're leaving ourselves open to a situation where companies that we need to invest and need to invest in energy production are not going to do so. And the OBR has made that quite clear. But even if the OBR had not done its predictions, economic logic would ensure that we understood the point that if you take investment allowances away from people and if you tax them, then they're not going to have less money to invest. The Minister makes a great point, of course, that by putting all of these measures in the statute book, he creates certainty for the industry. He does create certainty. Anybody looking at this, they know for certain what the future is, i.e. they're going to be taxed until the pips squeak, and therefore they're going to look for other places to go and make their investment. And, you know, just to make the argument that by putting out your tax plans, it somehow gives assurance to companies. Sometimes it confirms their prejudices that really Britain is not going to be a place where they have a future or where they should wish to invest. The third thing, a third impact of this, of course, is, and the lady, the honourable member from Early made this point as well, that the whole purpose of the government is tax these companies, get money, and will help working people by putting it into schools, etc. But the predictions are that actually will not be getting more revenue.
So is it running a lot more smoothly?
Because if there's less production, then there's less tax to be paid. And if there's less tax to be paid, the government has less revenue to invest in the things which members opposite and members on this side would wish them to invest in. And where does that tax go? That tax will go to foreign countries. Because that's where production will take place, and that's where the oil companies will be taxed. They'll get taxed where they make their profits. Not making any profits in the United Kingdom, then they don't pay revenue in the United Kingdom, take their production elsewhere, and they get their revenue elsewhere, or they pay their revenue, the tax revenue elsewhere. So, I mean, there doesn't appear to be any logic, any economic logic to this proposal, other than, well, the oil companies are seen as bad, so we've got to tax them, even though we're taxed heavily already.
Spot on. Sammy is a rocket, off he goes. Yeah, mad as a box of frogs, isn't it?
We want to ensure that we have this transition to net zero, even though we know that we're still going to be needing the product which the oil companies produce for many, many decades in the future, and we turn our back on that production in the United Kingdom. I think if the government is so sure that this plan, this cunning plan, I think Baldrick would have been embarrassed by this cunning plan, I've got to say, but that this cunning plan is going to work, then it should not fear any examination of it. And therefore, it should welcome. In fact, maybe once the assessment is done, they'll be able to point to red faces on this side of the House. And if I was so certain, as the Minister is, that his plan is going to work, then I'd be saying, right, we'll do the assessment and we'll make you eat your words in future. I suspect that the reason why this new Clause 2 will be rejected today is that the red faces are going to be on that side of the House. The eating of the words is going to be on the government side. And unfortunately, the people who are going to suffer will be the hundreds of thousands of people who will find facing fuel bills, rising fuel bills, the 100,000 workers who will face redundancies, and an industry which we much need in this country going into decline.
Point of order, Dave Dugan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last but one speaker called me out in debate regarding comments, perfectly legitimate comments, that I observed that there wasn't a single Scottish Labour MP in here, and I chose my words carefully, taking part in this debate. Now, I appreciate that from Labour members opposite, there is a Labour member here who, unless I'm very much mistaken, is fulfilling the role of a PPS and therefore will not be taking part in the debate. I would ask your guidance, Madam Chair, on whether or not it is legitimate to call somebody out in debate and not give them an opportunity. I tried to intervene on the honourable member for Airlie and Woodley to correct the record, but she refused. How can we correct the record to underline the fact there is not a single Scottish Labour MP in here taking part on this debate on Scotland's energy?
The honourable gentleman will be aware that that is not a matter for the Chair, and therefore I can't provide advice as to how the honourable gentleman can put that on the record. He will know, as well as other honourable members do, that it is entirely at the discretion of the individual contributing at that time whether or not they take an intervention. But I have to say the honourable member has done good work in putting his point on the record via the mechanism of a point of order.
Go get him, Derek. I nearly said Derek Dogan. It's David Dogan. Or is it Derek? I can't remember now. Her name's just escaped me. I do apologise. I should know. But yeah, as I say, I probably missed that a little bit, but didn't mess about, did I? I love Stephen Bankier up here. Well, yeah, yes. As I say, it's just a bit of an impromptu live stream. I just wanted to do a bit of running check. I just wanted to see if I could sort something out. It didn't work how I wanted it to work, but it was from what I've been reading, from the chat, it's been quite productive. It's sort of like to help me to understand where things have been going wrong and how I can improve on things. So So it has been quite productive.
Adrian Ramsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to echo the arguments made by the member for Ely and Woodley and from the member for Bath earlier in the debate. I rise to speak to whether Clause 18 in Schedule 3 should stand part of this bill. I want to argue that both should be omitted to remove the proposed new tax relief for carbon capture and storage installations as currently drafted. The tax regime for oil and gas is riddled with reliefs, exemptions and loopholes. The windfall tax introduced by the last government was widely reported. What was slightly less reported was the increased tax relief that went along with this, which allowed oil and gas companies to deduct 91% of their capital investment costs from their tax bill. We're now many years into an escalating climate crisis, one which oil companies have known they were causing since at least 1977. There's absolutely no excuse for public subsidies which incentivise fossil fuel companies to expand their operations. So while I welcome the increase in the rate of the energy profits levy and the reduction of the investment allowance, I want to highlight that because of other reliefs which still exist, North Sea oil and gas companies will still be able to offset 84% of capital expenditure against tax in relation to expansion of operations. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chairman. Does the honourable member accept that capital reliefs are about attracting investment that creates jobs and secures energy security for this country, and that we have to be competitive in the global market, enabling UK companies to make those investments? And if we don't do that, what does the honourable member think will happen to that industry and to the 100,000 jobs that go with it?
Well, thank you for that intervention. And as we've heard from earlier in this debate, it's vital that there is strong government support and a dedicated plan to ensure that there's a transition for job opportunities for anyone working on the oil and gas sector. And as someone with a background in the renewable energy sector, I strongly support government incentives and policies that will help that sector to expand to ensure we're creating the jobs and skills for people.
So it was just an impromptu live stream.
My proposals would reverse the government's proposal to offer tax relief for the conversion of oil and gas infrastructure to carbon capture and storage installations. There are many other reliefs within the tax regime which should also be addressed, but are out of...
Yeah, will do, Lee. Cheers for that. Yeah, I could do with a bit of an helping hand. I think I have a slightly idea where I know where I'm going wrong, but, you know, your expertise will be really, really appreciated.
The scope of this bill. Now, carbon capture and storage is a complex area. There are different types of technology which use different techniques, and I support further research and development, for example, in relation to the hard-to-abate sector. But CCS cannot be used as a fig leaf for expansion of fossil fuel operations. In reality, years of hype have resulted in very little carbon being captured globally, less than 0.1% of annual emissions. Most of the carbon dioxide that has been successfully captured has been used to extract more oil. The UK has also been criticised for targeting most of its CCS at so-called blue hydrogen, which would increase our long-term reliance on gas, generating more carbon emissions. The proposed tax relief is too blunt an instrument to make a useful contribution to decarbonisation. The role of CCS is still relatively untested, so it's vital we don't bake in over-reliance on this technology. Public funding for CCS should therefore be restricted to research and development and to projects which would clearly help decarbonise hard-to-abate sectors. It absolutely must not be a green light to the fossil fuel companies to carry on with business as usual and expansions of operations. And I'd welcome hearing from the Minister in his winding up whether he would explore a review of this measure in line with what I've suggested. Thank you.
Adam Dodds.
Madam Chair. We Liberal Democrats were the first to call for a tax on oil and gas windfall profits in 2021 October. So I'm glad to see the current government's bill is finally scrapping the unfair investment and allowing the loophole after years of oil and gas companies not paying their fair share under the Conservatives. I'd also urge the House to adopt our tabled amendment to this bill. The amendment calls on the government to set out exactly how much money is being raised through the scrapping of this investment allowance loophole and how much money was basically gifted by the last government to the oil and gas giants. My constituents in Yeovil deserve full transparency on this. Can I also take this opportunity to encourage the government to use the money raised through this to invest more in addressing energy and environmental issues impacting my constituents of Yeovil, such as fuel poverty, particularly amongst pensioners, protecting homes and businesses from flooding and supporting farmers in green investments, and helping homeowners with clean heating and insulation. Madam Chair, in conclusion, we must make sure our constituencies get a fair deal out of this bill. If the average taxpayer is expected to pay their fair share, then so must the wealthiest individuals and companies in this country. There cannot be one rule for them and one rule for the rest of us.
Minister.
We'll just have a listen to this last one, and then I'll probably be calling it a draw, because I'll be soon be heading off down for dinner, and my beloved he'd soon be calling me. As I say, it was just an impromptu live stream. It was just something I wanted to see if I could sort something out, but it's been quite productive.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And may I start by thanking honourable members for their contributions to today's debate. I'll take a few moments in my concluding remarks to respond to some of the points raised during the debate on these clauses, and to set out the government's views on the proposed amendments. To start with the opposition spokesperson, the honourable member for Grantham and Bourne, he asked for confirmation about the energy security investment mechanism and our decision to retain it. I hope he will take yes for an answer on this, because yes, I can confirm that the ESIM will remain in effect until March the 31st, 2030, when the EPL, the Energy Profits Levy, is due to end. It will continue to be adjusted in line with CPI inflation in future financial years. I hope that sets his mind at rest in relation to that point. The honourable member opposite also mentioned questions about modelling the impact of the Energy Profits Levy. And I'm sure he'll remember from his time in the Treasury the role that the Office of Budget Responsibility plays, and he'll see in their report published alongside the budget their forecast of £12.6 billion being raised from the Energy Profits Levy over the forecast period, and of course the OBR will produce updated forecasts next year. The honourable member, along with some of the other honourable members who contributed today, kept raising the phrase around extraordinary profits, trying to understand what position the oil and gas sector are currently in. And in fact, Madam Chair, this links directly to the energy security investment mechanism, because prices currently remain higher than the level we have set in the price floor. And by virtue of having the energy security investment mechanism in place, that means that should prices fall sufficiently and return to historically normal levels, then the levy will be disapplied. And so the relationship between the level of profits and the maintenance of the energy security investment mechanism is key to understanding the government's approach. Madam Chair, we also heard from the Lib Dem spokesperson, the honourable member for St Albans, who asked about the choice of the rate of 78%, at which we're setting the energy profits levy, and other attributes of the system which we're setting up through the clauses being debated today. I would say to the honourable member that what we're seeking to achieve is a balanced approach. We're raising the rate to 78%. We're extending the levy for a further year. We're removing the investment allowance, which we deem to be unjustifiably generous. But at the same time, we're also maintaining 100% first-year allowances, the decarbonisation allowance, and indeed the energy security investment mechanism. And we believe that strikes the right balance between making sure that we ensure oil and gas companies continue to invest in oil and gas for years to come, whilst also making a contribution and supporting the transition toward clean energy. And it's that balance that our legislation today seeks to achieve. Madam Chair, we also heard from the honourable member from Angus and Perthshire, Glens, who spoke about the need for long-term stability. And I entirely agree with him that we need long-term stability. But that is precisely what our approach seeks to achieve by saying that the energy profits levy will come to an end in March 2030 by having the energy security investment mechanism as a price floor, which we've mentioned several times already, and as I mentioned in my opening remarks, by proceeding with our consultation on the post-energy profits levy regime to give those people who are thinking about investing in oil and gas sector confidence post 2030, not just until the end of the Energy Profits Levy itself. The Honourable Member for East Antrim also mentioned long-term stability, and I hope, although he seems distracted right now, that will be of some reassurance to him. Madam Chair, I might also just put on record, I think the Honourable Member for Angus and Perthshire Glens referred to a £78 relief available for investment in Norway compared to £46 in the UK. But in fact, in the UK, whilst the Energy Profits Levy remains in place, the sector continues to benefit from an £84.25 relief for every £100 of investment. So I hope that gives him some reassurance in response to the points that he raised. I'd like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Earley and Woodley, for her thoughtful and informed contribution, which set out how our approach strikes the right balance. And I have to say, Madam Chair, I was disappointed by the contribution from the member for Waveney Valley because he seemed not to support our moves to ensure that tax will not be a blocker to CCUS. CCUS will play an essential role in our progress towards net zero, and the UK has a chance to be a world leader in that sector, and I would have hoped he might support our efforts in that regard. Now, Madam Chair, I note that 2 new clauses have been tabled, which honourable members spoke to in some of their contributions, and these new clauses required reports to be published. I remember tabling many such new clauses myself over the last few years. New Clause 2, tabled by the honourable member for St Albans, would require the government to produce a report setting out the fiscal impact of the removal of the Energy Profits Levy investment allowance and the change to the rate for the decarbonisation investment allowance. Meanwhile, New Clause 3, tabled by the Right Honourable Member for Central Devon, would require the government to produce a report on the expected impact of the levy changes in a number of areas, including on capital expenditure in the UK oil and gas industry and on the Scottish economy. Madam Chair, the government opposes these amendments on the basis they are unnecessary. The government has already set out the impacts of this measure in a tax information and impact note, which was published at Autumn Budget 2024. That note includes that the changes made to the Energy Profits Levy will raise an additional £2.3 billion over the scorecard, and further data on the UK oil and gas industry is regularly published on gov.uk. To conclude, Madam Chair, I hope I've been able to address some of the points raised by honourable members today and reassure them the proposed clauses are not necessary for the reasons I set out. I therefore urge the House to reject new clauses 2 and 3. I beg to move that clauses 15 to 18 and Schedule 3 stand part of the bill.
The question is that clause 15 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Yes, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. All I have to say is that was quite. As I say, when it comes to stuff like this, it all goes over my head, and I find it, and it all find very confusing. And clearly, there's far more intelligent people who know more about this stuff. And but, yes. But yeah, having Mad Monkey, having our energy resources owned by private companies doesn't give us energy security. Just ripped off energy prices. Yeah. I think you got very much. I get the feeling you're absolutely spot on there. And as Alistair Kerr says, yeah, carbon capture does not work. It leaks from ground back into the air. Is that right? Very interesting. Very interesting. Hello. Yeah. Prompt you or not. It's always nice. Yeah, it's always nice to see you, my friend. Hope you're well, yeah. Yeah. As I say, what is it? I noticed what. Let's do. Yeah. He said something earlier. Say that. I see we're driving home or going to work. You are, yeah, you my drive time show. Oh, very nice. I'm incredibly honoured, privileged. Well, as I say, it's Scotland's oil and gas still propping up in Westminster. Yeah, you're probably right, actually, there, when I think about it. But yeah, it's as I say, it was just I didn't really have any plans on doing anything fancy. I just thought, well, I'll see what's on in House of Commons, and if I'm doing some sort of what you could say, sort of like looking at see how I can improve my frame rate, because I've noticed when I look back on some of my Friday frolics, I've noticed the video can seem a little bit bitty, and like, judging by the comments I've been reading and conversations I've had with Leak on, I think what it is because I've got too much going off on my laptop to handle it all. So I just got the feeling that maybe it's a case of having maybe do the chats from my phone, like that saves them, and maybe if I've got any sort of like bullet points for any notes, because like I'm terrible with names and stuff like that when it comes to my Friday frolic. If I have them written down on some sort of tablet, it probably will help keep, because like you've all seemed to say that when it came to the video looks a lot more smoother, so maybe that's the problem. But yeah, it's yes. But as I say, it was, even though it didn't quite go how I wanted it to go, because I was trying to get on the side of the screen where I can see me chat, right, where I can see who's talking on my chat. But with OBS, it typically just doesn't seem to work that way. But it's the way it goes, doesn't it? It didn't work out that way, but I do find it the information I was getting in the chat very, very productive, so quite healthy. But anyway, all I'll say before I go, so I don't know if any of you saw my video I did earlier on. It was just something that I wanted to try and do something a little bit different, because of a simple reason. When Parliament gets into recess, I know you enjoy all the select committee meetings and all the House of Commons. When it's in recess, I'm stuck for ideas. So I've just sort of like been branched out a little bit, tried a little something different, and to be honest, I quite enjoyed it actually. It got my creative side flowing, and had a bit of good fun with it. But well, as I say, I think I'm just have a little bit of a chat about what I want to go forward with this channel for next year. I'll be trying to do other little things, little ideas, because I know you all enjoy the House of Commons select committee meetings, but it kind of sort of like puts me into a bit of a corner, and when it's in recess, I'm a little bit stuck. So if I can just sort of like branch out a little bit and improve on help improve my editing skills and just have a bit of fun as well, it can all help as well. And I say, because when it came to I've noticed if I tie myself into a similar space, it doesn't help with moving the channel forward, because I seem to. It was a strange experience, because like I thought, come last Christmas, I set myself a bit of a goal. I didn't really tell anybody, a little personal goal. I thought I would just knocking on the door of 30,000 subs, and I thought, see if I can get to. I thought maybe the impossible task, but I like to challenge myself. See if I can get to 40,000, and if I fall short, say if I got to about 35, 36, it's still successful. But you can. That old. I once heard somebody say, if you over. What's the word I'm after? If you set your goal to higher than what you originally planned, if you fall short, you've still hit your target, I suppose. So So I thought, if I can get to 35, then we're still progressing nicely. 40 would be absolutely brilliant. And I don't know, it's been a weird year this year because I'd got started early January. It wasn't doing too bad. And then all of a sudden this just started long enough. And then I went back in. I started losing subs and I'm thinking, I wonder what I'm doing wrong there. I'm doing something clearly wrong. And then over the last couple of months, it's started to come back up. So it's, but it just seems to me that it's a little bit like Groundhog Day. I've probably only gone up by maybe about 1,000 subs. But anyway, subs are not exactly the be all and end all. But I say this, and I think a lot of the times I've had things going on in the background in my life where it's been a little bit difficult. So, but anyway, I've set myself same target again, and if I can get to 35, but if I hit 40 come next Christmas, I'll be incredibly happy. But if I can get to 35, still be happy. So I'm still gonna do the same, aim high and higher than what I think I'll expect, because I think 40,000 will be very, very difficult. But that's the plan. And I'm going to have a few other ideas in my head where branch a little bit away from select committee meetings and House of Commons as well, because the slight problem is there's not that many crazies in the House of Commons now, and there's not that many crazies in the select committee meetings. And although it's interesting and it's all fascinating what they're doing there, but if there's nothing to keep people interested, I've watched plenty of fantastic select committee meetings, and I'll make a video out and only a couple of thousand people watch it. Where if you get a crazy in there and it just goes whoosh, the views go over, and there's not that many crazies in the select committee meetings, and there's not that many. The Scottish Affairs Select Committee meetings, there's going to be dynamite in there because you've got Stephen Flynn, and he's always good value. Other than that, I watched around a couple of select committee, and I watched the Rachel Reeves Treasury Committee select committee, and let's just say it wasn't that interesting. There wasn't much material in there I could have used to make anything out of it. So I'll be doing one or two other little ideas, just branch out a little bit, because if I box myself in the select committee meetings and the House of Commons, as I've watched a few times, there's not that much drama, you could say. And when it comes to YouTube, the videos that has the drama, they do a lot better. Whereas if you do the important stuff, like maybe stuff like in the environment, a lot of people show much interest. But anyway, as the algorithm says, it's not what you should have. But yeah, your Wii laptop can't handle all the things running in the background. Just close what you're not using and things should be okay. Yeah, that's probably... Hello, Julie Brown. Hope you're well. Hope you're well. No, what's really happened. I was just basically, just a bit of an impromptu... hello, Pork Chop Express. Hope you're well. It was just an impromptu live stream. I just wanted to do a little bit of running repair sort of thing, because I've noticed in my Friday frolics, it's been a case of I've noticed my video looks a little bit choppy, and I'm thinking clearly there's something happening going on, and I wanted to try a little idea of something where I could put my chat into a certain place on my OBS, but I can't seem to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort out with other screens. And I've worked out why it's been a bit choppy. I've got too much working on things going on in my live stream. Like I'll have me chat in the background, then I'll have me whatever I've got on my Twitter, you know, for material, and then I'll have something where, well, I'll have little notes and bullet points, you know, with names and dates and stuff like that, and it's knocking hell out my memory. That is, even though I didn't manage to do what I was trying to do, it's still been quite productive because I've learnt a lot, and so come next time I do a live stream, I will be I'll be better prepared. Yeah. Hello, Jan Wallace. Hope you well. And I hope Joe left. I said, I hope Joe left. I said, just a crying shame you turning up at the end. As I say, it was just impromptu. Say it's just impromptu live. So I just wanted to do a bit of running repairs, which is a bit of a shame. So it wasn't anything planned. But anyway, YouTube has been deleting subscriptions from small channels as their algorithm says it's not what you should have. There was a thing on YouTube reference. Was that? Is that true? Interesting. Very, very interesting. It was quite interesting because I was watching it. I'm thinking, I don't understand why my subs. There were times where my subs go, and if I'm honest, I couldn't work out. I would look on my audit channel, and it'd be a case of I'd look, see, and it'd be a Friday Frolics. I'd be see people unsubscribing on there, and I'm thinking, I've three unsubscribed from there, and thinking, really? I think you're getting all salty over just having a bit of a Friday fun, and really, I think no, that can't be right. Don't push too hard. You already have the personality, the wit, and yes, need to. Well, thank you. I'll take that as the what's the word I'm after? I'm quite honoured that. Thank you very much. Cheers for that. Yeah, it's what I'm thinking of doing. Come maybe after Christmas, do a few more live streams, because I know with some of the select committee meetings, and if I do, I'll probably maybe, if I can work out, you know, this old fat can work out how to do polls in the community chat, and name a couple of select committee meetings you might be interested in watching. Because I know there's been one with Lisa and Andy today. I might watch that sometime later on. Yeah, no worries, Julie Brown. It's good to see you. Good to see you, my friend. Yes, when your cats need feeding, they need feeding. Yes, and when it comes to the pets come first. Don't worry about it. So, but yeah, that certainly won't. But anyway, you know, it's been, even though I didn't manage to do what I was trying to do, still been quite productive, and I've sort of like got a clearer mind in how I'm going to do this now. If I've got any bullet points and notes, I've got a little bit of a tablet. I'll just write them on there, and I'll probably just use my phone, you know, for my chat, and that just takes all the strain off my laptop. Just like I'd say, I'd created a bit of a short video. And all right, the other David and I went on a subscriber drive in our 43 Facebook group, and it went from 1,000 to 2,000 in a few days. YouTube unsubscribed 800. Wow. That's interesting, isn't it? That's very, very interesting. Wow. Because it's almost as if they're trying to stop you from progressing. But that's going to be that's what I'm going to try and do again next year. Hopefully, a bit better success. Even if I don't make 40,000, I'm not going to beat me. Even though I didn't beat myself up about it, but I just think maybe I was doing something wrong. Because end of the day, you know, when it comes to people subscribing and not subscribing, it's their personal choice, isn't it? And I think that's why I think I've sort of like said at me, and if you like everything else of Commons, and select committee meetings, like and subscribe. Whereas before I just didn't. I just didn't really. But I was thinking to myself, maybe I'm not doing myself any favours by, you know, slightly reminder, because we all do it sometimes. We watch something. Oh, I enjoyed that. Whoever made that content, and don't subscribe. So, but yeah, that's going to be a plan of action. See if I can do it again. But anyway, I suppose I think dinner will be ready soon. So what I will do is I'll just, as I say, thanks for stopping by. You know, it's been quite productive, and I've learned a lot. I'll probably still have a chat with Lee Corn later on, and see if I can come up with more ideas on how to improve things, because let's just say it's been doing my head in trying to sort out the chat. So what I will do is, oh God, good evening, global citizen. It's just a crying shame. I'll be leaving. I'm leaving now, because it was just an impromptu live stream where I put a bit of something that happened in House of Commons, where I was doing a bit of running repairs on my OBS, because I've noticed some of me Friday Frolics looked a bit bitty and a little bit not at its best. But I've seen to improve that. Or I try to sort out something with my chat. It didn't work, but I've learned a lot more. So anyway, all I will say is just say thanks for stopping by, and yeah, see you soon, Jenny Battle, and probably I'll probably do a few more live streams of select committees, like maybe even the Welsh select committee and Northern Ireland select committee meetings, because I know I've a broad church, and the Scottish select committee meetings. I know I have a broad church of subscribers from all around the country. So yeah, I'll probably do a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, you too, my friend. Take care, Stephen Banky, and see you everybody else. I hope you all have a fantastic evening. Thanks for stopping by, and thanks for the chat and the advice and help. It's been very, very productive. So I shall just bid you farewell and take care, my friends, and have a lovely evening.